Alright, so let's dive right into 3 then, shall we? The first thing I want to say is that I think it's funny that it seems like Belch is being referred to like he's some sort of politician, like in this sentence. A young adventurer named Ness and his friend Paula have indicated that they are willing to challenge Belch, who is the acknowledged master of the zombies. Another weird thing on this page is that apparently the Mr. Saturns are known to the people of Threed, because this is weird to me because I always interpreted them as being kind of, they're in like a hidden valley, so I thought they're like these mystical creatures that people don't really know about. But no, apparently they're very well known. It is thought that the zombie paper will allow Ness and Paula to take the underground road that leads to Belch's secret base near Saturn Valley. There's also this hilarious photoshopped picture of the SkyRunner in a graveyard, which, you could debate whether is tasteful or not. Like, imagine you're playing EarthBound and you're like, oh my gosh, there's Grandpa. This section labeled Secret Base Discovered also just straight up tells you the password to Belch's factory, which is interesting and some really good investigative journalism if you ask me. A funny thing is that just on the next page, 39, you can see the same photo of the graveyard from the previous page that had the SkyRunner in it, reused here for the once again. The Fast Facts section has a cute little Wizard of Oz reference for some reason. Page 40 has a map of Threed, which once again has the Red Cross on the hospital, and this is where it's pretty safe to say this is probably going to be on all the maps, so this is going to be the last mention of it. I also find it hilarious that the arms dealer seems to have taken out a Yellow Pages-esque ad here. It also features a reference to The Godfather, which is pretty cool. I also find it funny that the section just below it is called the Threed Drug Emporium after all the work they did to make it so the stores said store on it instead of drugs. I don't know, Drug Emporium just sounds funny to me. Page 41 has a pretty funny way of explaining away the woman you have to meet in the hotel. Zombies aren't the only hazard to be found on the streets of Threed in these troubled times. Visitors have reported a suspicious woman, dressed to kill and loitering outside the hotel. These unfortunate fools who have followed her are savagely attacked by a group of thugs. So yeah, they just end up straight up reworking this character into something completely different. She's like a hardcore gangster now. Heading over to the Winter's News section. The first interesting thing to me is the Youth Flees Dormitory section here. I know there's no way this could be intentional, but I just love the implication that Jeff had a gun in his school photo. I don't know, I just assume that's the photo they're using because that's what you would use in this situation. I just find it funny. Another interesting tidbit about this part is that it also name drops the Tenderkraut. Also, the section on the Tessie sighting is great. Jubilant members of the Tessie Watching Club report seeing a large dinosaur swimming in the waters of Lake Tess yesterday morning. The recent account is hotly refuted by local skeptics, who refuse to believe there is any truth to the legend that a dinosaur lives beneath the surface of Lake Tess. The stories regarding the 4-limbed Mosaic-era reptile have existed since the founding of Winters in 1889. People couldn't believe the Fourside Rangers would ever win the Stanley Cup, but they did, argued an unidentified Tessie Club member. Critics of the report argue that the Tessie Watching Club experienced a group hallucination. You get a group of people camping out there in the snow, they catch hypothermia and start acting weird, commented one local pessimist. Remember when those producers filmed that rock video here last year? The same stupid stuff happened. You can't run around in the snowy woods wearing leather chains and a guitar. Absolutely amazing. Also, Monkey. Interestingly enough, this actually confirms that Bubble Monkey is an escaped laboratory monkey and just kind of went to the drugstore afterwards to hide out, which is interesting. On page 43, in the population section, there's a part where it says the average age, and I don't know who that's advertising to. I just also really like that Dr. Andonuts has a donut in his clay model. There's something very satisfying about that donut. On page 45, the Cave Boy's bio has weird spacing for his name. Likely a typo, just jumped out at me. Page 46 gives the player a full breakdown of Jeff's IQ system, and actually very helpfully gives a breakdown of the IQ level he needs to fix each thing in the game, which is really awesome. On page 47, which officially calls this cave the Pond Cave, actually has bios for the Strong Crocodile and Shroom, which probably confused a lot of kids and is probably organized this way, just for simplicity by sorting by location. In the section The Mystery of Stonehenge on page 48, the guide incorrectly tells you to use the pencil eraser on the eraser statue. There's also this very strange photo right underneath it, which I have no idea what it's trying to convey. Page 49 has 2 interesting bits of information. One is this really cool official artwork of the fly honey. I really appreciate this. This looks really cool. And the other is what could technically be considered a minor error, because in the section using zombie paper it says, during the night you'll see the zombies gathering at the tent. In the morning the zombies will be gone and the sun will be shining, even though Threed will still be covered in darkness until you beat the Trillion Age sprout. Page 50 refers to Saturn Valley as Saturn Valley Village, which is interesting. And the Saturn Valley drugstore sign on page 51 incorrectly lists the stag beetle as just the beetle. The map of the Belch base on page 52 refers to this room as the Magic Butterfly Room, and page 53 actually straight up tells you should refill all of your PP by going in and out of this room to keep getting that magic butterfly over and over again, which kind of definitively proves this was an intentional design choice. A weird little thing on this same page is the Armored Frog's bio refers to PK Rockin' as PSI Power. Once again, it just really cannot settle on what to call this a move. On page 54, when they explain that you should go back for the Saturn coin, it doesn't actually explain that it's a piece of equipment. It kind of equates it to money and then just kind of moves on, which is funny. And look, yet again, in the Milky Well hole section, it refers to it as PSI Rockin'. They cannot make up their minds, man. Page 55 has kind of a weird thing in the Sound of the Well section where it says, the power of this place is such that you will even hear the voice of your mom from far away. If you have a sound stone, you will record the melody of the Milky Well. If? For one thing, you can't get rid of the sound stone, so there's no if about it. And also, why a sound stone? There's only one in the game. Yeah, this is super nitpicky, but damn it, lore matters. Also, right below this section is a reference to the Beatles, which is always nice to see in Earthbound stuff, especially knowing how much a toy loves them. And with that, now on to the Dusty Dunes Desert News page, which goes out of its way to actually give a date, which is interesting. That's right, Earthbound in the summer confirmed, which actually kind of conflicts with the game at points because sometimes people bring up homework. Something small but appreciated on this page is the official artwork of the present box. I just really like how it looks. I like how this section detailing all of the backed up traffic in the desert doesn't even attempt to pick a picture that looks like it's in a desert. And the section right below it about Talarama is actually really weird because it brings up some things completely out of order, mentioning the yogurt machine way before this ever comes up. There's also a pretty cool section on the bottom half of this page that tells you all about the different combinations of foods and condiments, which can be helpful. Page 57 denotes that there are 2,000,001 cacti in the Dusty Dunes desert, though I definitely can't find them. This section lower on the page with the bodacious babe, as some 90s people would call her, details how sunstroke in the desert works, but doesn't tell you that you can heal with PSI Healing Beta. Small but still there, this suntan tour ad also features a bodacious babe, I believe. But the most interesting thing on this page to me is that it gives us an actual canon visual of the gold miner. Straight up, they give us an actual actor who is the guy. This may seem small, but to me I find this to be really cool to know that there are actual technical, canonical renditions of live-action Earthbound characters. And hey, now that Earthbound movie has become infinitely more possible since I've made my video, now they know who to look for this part. On page 58, you're straight up told false information, them telling you that the Smiling Spheres will only blow up if they're with other enemies when you're fighting them, which isn't true. Page 59, weirdly enough, finally gives you the bios for the Ranboob and Trillion Age Sprout really late. And this page also really rails against the Slot Brothers for some reason. Straight up saying that they're just bandits trying to scam you. I also enjoy this bit of dark humor with the cow bones. One of the historical sights you may encounter on your trek through the sands is the remains of unfortunate livestock who failed to bring wet towels with them. That's hilarious. Page 60 gives us the Fourside Post, which oddly enough straight up gives us a first name for Everdred. Al. Which, you know what? Alfred Everdred rolls right off the tongue, honestly. Or Albert, even. The travel and shopping guide on the next page has a weird name drop for New York, and talks about how Fourside is frequently compared to it. This just seems weird to me because the subtext is that it's satirizing New York City, so I don't see what the point in bringing this up is. It just kind of ruins the allegory, honestly. Page 62 has a weird error where it tells you that enemies will have green faces instead of the blue like it did before. Scrolling down a bit to page 66, this page has such a confusing layout. And just this weird picture of a woman in the center of the ads for some reason. This just whole section is really weird. Page 67 features a pretty funny bio for the Nooseman. This bad braid, this twing of terror isn't as much of a pain in the neck as it seems. Use PSI Fire to unravel its attack. I'm still just so blatantly shocked that this was able to make it into the game in the first place, and seeing it played up even more here is also still funny. This one's a bit of a nitpick, but the bios for the Mad Taxi and Crazed Sign have a slight typo technically. They refer to PSI Paralysis as PSI Paralyze, and the Crazed Sign bio also refers to hypnosis as Sleep PSI. It's a very small one, but I don't know, I wish it was a little bit more consistent. This game was being targeted at very young children when it came out, so I would understand if they were confused because they didn't know hypnosis means the same thing as sleep. Okay, maybe it's not for some people, but on page 68, the map that shows the warps for Moonside is just hilariously confusing. Luckily for me, when I was a kid, I didn't have to consult the player's guide very often. But oh boy, if I had to use it for Moonside, this would have been no help to me at all. I have so much trouble understanding what this is even saying. And something minor, they don't tell you that you have to actually talk to the guard of Moonside before the guys will start teleporting you to the right place. It's a small thing, but I was a dumb kid, so I would have wandered around for literally hours not knowing what to do. Something interesting about page 69 is that it actually refers to the annoying reveler as a drunk. He may look pretty potted, but this obnoxious drunk sobers up in battle. Use a regular attack. Things like this just make me wonder if this book was being written at the same time as the localization was. I mean, yeah, it's pretty obvious looking at the sprite, but you know, the localization did its best to try to patch this up through the text. And I'm just surprised that Nintendo of America, especially Nintendo of America of the 90s, would let something like this go. I've gotta be honest, I have a strong hunch that they just didn't read much of this. A complaint I have about this page is the bio for the mystical record says to use PSI Fire, but when you're fighting this, you're only gonna have Ness and Jeff, so it's not going to help because nobody has PSI Fire. Sure, you might fight them later in Dungeon Man when you have Paula back who actually can, but by that point you're gonna have way stronger attacks and are not gonna have to rely on fire. They had the spirit, but this is just very unhelpful for this point in the game. Page 70 has a straight up translation error and calls Talarama Tararama, clearly using the romanization of his Japanese name. But still, I'm kinda surprised that this one got through considering it's so obvious he's meant to satirize the Dalai Lama. Also, something about this page is the hilarious map for the monkey cave, which is insanely unhelpful and confusing. Like seriously, this whole page is just so hilarious to me. Like, why isn't it looped up and down or left to right or something? I get there's branching paths, but there's much better ways to deal with it than this. You can tell they were just really struggling to fit this all on one page even. One more interesting thing about this Monkey Cave maze map is that it refers to the Dragonite as Dragon Powder. Page 71 actually gives some pretty good advice when trying to use PSI Teleport and tells you that you need about a screen and a half of running space to get it to work, which is honestly, in my opinion, very nice to know. The bio for the evil Manny Manny boss doesn't tell you that you should equip the Night Pendant so that it can't be hit with flash and just bypass the scrolling health meter, which would have been nice to know, I think. It also says that you should be able to beat him without too much difficulty, which, you know, in some cases just isn't true. This boss is pretty random. The bio for the Sentry bot right below it is a little bit repetitive, saying it takes about 300 HP of damage, and then right below that saying it has 372 HP, which is just kind of weird to me. Furthermore, the bio for the Clumsy Robot right below that is also confusing. It tells you to seek help from the Runaway 5, but doesn't explain that it's because the cutscene kicks in during the battle and not that you actually have to find them. I'm sure this confused a ton of kids is what I'm saying. Also, strangely enough, this page tells you about the Plague Rat of Doom way before it tells you anything about that dungeon. Like seriously, the layout for some of these sections is just so bizarre to me. Could you imagine kids just scrambling to look through their books trying to find the enemy while they're fighting it, you know? Page 72 refers to PSI Rockin' as simply your special PSI attack, which I think is a much better way of describing it. Okay, I know this doesn't matter at all, but the section talking about running away with a Runaway 5 says this time you won't have to fork over $1 million for the honor of riding with them, but technically you only had to fork over $10,000 because the only time you rode with them before was after Tucson. You didn't ride with them after you saved them from the Tupola Theater where you actually gave the $1 million diamond. It's very nitpicky, but the lore. The SkyRunner repairs section refers to the two people by the SkyRunner and Threed as kids, even though one of them is obviously a full-grown man with a mustache. I like the bio for the abstract art on page 73. This art may not make sense to you. It makes Ness sleepy just thinking about it. Use paralysis to knock some sense into the painting. I just find this funny because it reminds me of that whole line in Mother 3 of he talked passionately about art, Duster didn't understand, you know. And with Shroom out of the way, we now head to Summers.